It's 6:47 a.m. on a Tuesday in late September 2027. Your phone buzzes on the nightstand, and you roll over, half asleep, to check it. The screen isn't showing a text message. It isn't showing a calendar reminder. It's showing a single number, glowing white on a black background, 37. You don't remember installing this app. You don't remember opting into it. But there it is, a score out of 100, with a single line underneath. Your Civic Reliability Index has been updated. Down 4 points from last week. You blink. You look at the ceiling. You decide it's some kind of prank, some update from a bank you barely use, some gamified health app you forgot to delete. You put the phone down and start making coffee. This is the day the machines take over. Not with robots in the streets. Not with a red alert klaxon and soldiers marching. It happens quietly, at breakfast, one score at a time, and you will spend the rest of the day discovering that the number on your phone already decided everything that was about to happen to you. Here's the part almost nobody is talking about. Algorithmic governance is not a science fiction scenario anymore. It is already running your life in a dozen invisible ways, it just hasn't been given a single name yet. By 2027, automated systems were screening job applications at the majority of large employers, setting insurance premiums, flagging welfare claims, recommending bail decisions, and quietly scoring your creditworthiness in ways the law barely regulates. And here's the uncomfortable truth. None of these systems was built to be a dictator. Each one was built to save money, to speed up paperwork, to catch fraud, to be more efficient than a human. Individually, they all seem reasonable. Collectively, they form a nervous system that decides your fate with no oversight, no appeals process, and no accountability. The stakes are brutally simple. When an algorithm makes a mistake, the human it hurts usually cannot find out why, cannot challenge it, and cannot appeal to anyone who is actually responsible. In 2023, a former UK Post Office investigator testified that the Horizon software system, which falsely accused more than 700 sub-postmasters of theft, was treated as infallible for 2 decades. 2 decades. People went to prison. Some of them died before they were exonerated. The machines don't need to be evil to take over. They just need to be cheaper than a human with a conscience. And right now, that's the only test they're passing. Let's start with the machinery. An algorithmic governance system is, at its core, a score. Somewhere, a model takes every data point it can reach: your address, your job title, your shopping history, your phone's location pings, the keywords you type, the people you call, and compresses all of it into a single number that determines whether you're worth lending to, hiring, insuring, or trusting. The most famous example is Compass, the risk assessment tool used in US courtrooms. In 2016, ProPublica analyzed thousands of its decisions and found it was wrong as often as it was right, and that it falsely flagged black defendants as future criminals at almost twice the rate of white defendants, while white defendants were more likely to be labeled low risk and reoffend anyway. When judges were shown the score, they changed their bail decisions. A number produced by a proprietary algorithm whose internal logic the company refused to release was shifting who walked free and who sat in a cell. That is governance. It just happens to run on silicon. Then there's the hiring machine. Amazon built an AI recruiter in 2014, trained it on a decade of resumes, and discovered it had quietly learned to downgrade any applicant whose resume mentioned women's chess club or attended all women's colleges. The company killed the project in 2018, but the pattern didn't die with it. Automated hiring tools now screen resumes for the majority of Fortune 500 companies, and a 2023 survey found that a huge share of job seekers had applied to roles where a human never saw their application at all. Here's the part that should make your stomach drop. These systems don't need to be accurate. They need to be cheap. If an AI screens out 5% more qualified applicants than a human would, the company saves millions in recruiting costs. The people who got screened out, they never learn they were evaluated, never learn what the model was looking for, and never get a chance to appeal. The error cost is socialized onto you. In 2023, the Federal Trade Commission in the United States warned that AI hiring tools could violate civil rights law because a model trained on historical hiring data will happily reproduce historical discrimination, at industrial scale, forever, unless someone forces it to stop. The technical core of all of this is a branch of statistics called predictive modeling. It doesn't know you. It knows a vector of numbers that correlates with people like you. And here's the dirty secret the industry doesn't advertise. Correlation is not causation, but the law has treated these scores as if they were facts. When you're denied a loan and the bank says the model decided, there's no human reasoning to interrogate, just a probability, computed in microseconds, that you will never be allowed to see. The scale is the point. A single bad decision by a single biased human affects one person. A single flawed model, deployed across 1 million applications, produces 100,000 quiet injustices before anyone notices the pattern. That's the difference between a prejudiced boss and an algorithmic dictatorship. The first you can confront, the second you can't even find. By 2027, researchers were already mapping what they called algorithmic government, the growing list of countries where automated systems make or preempt decisions about benefits, migration, policing, education, and healthcare. The systems are all different. The architecture is always the same. Input. Score. Decision. No human in the loop unless someone complains loudly enough, and by then, the damage is done. Now let's make this human. In the Netherlands, starting in 2013, a government algorithm flagged thousands of families as childcare benefit fraudsters based on a single statistical risk factor, including having dual nationality. The system was treated as reliable. Families were ordered to repay tens of thousands of euros. Children were taken into care. Parents lost jobs, homes, marriages. In 2021, an official inquiry concluded that the system had discriminated against around 26,000 families, and the entire Dutch cabinet resigned over it. That is what algorithmic governance looks like when it fails, not a robot uprising, but a letter that arrives on a Thursday, and a family that spends 4 years proving the state was wrong. The parents were not guilty of fraud. They were guilty of matching a pattern. The same story repeated in Australia. Robodebt was a system that automatically compared income data and demanded welfare recipients repay debts the government's own calculations had invented. It issued around 443,000 false debts, totaling over $1 billion, to people who had done nothing wrong. A man killed himself after receiving a Robodebt letter. The Royal Commission in 2023 called it a massive failure of public administration driven by a deliberate strategy to automate. And in the United Kingdom, the Horizon scandal, which I mentioned at the start, is the clearest case in the English-speaking world. A software systems accounting was treated as legally infallible. Hundreds of sub-postmasters were prosecuted for theft and false accounting based on data that was wrong. In 2024, Parliament passed a law to exonerate them en masse, and the government announced compensation of over £1 billion. 2 decades. Hundreds of lives destroyed. And the algorithm was never held accountable, because an algorithm can't be held accountable. It just executed the logic its owners told it to execute. Here's what all of these cases have in common, and it's the pattern you need to burn into your memory. In every single scandal, there was a human who could have stopped it. There were warnings. There were whistleblowers. And every time, the organization chose to trust the machine because the machine was cheaper, faster, and never complained. The machine was the perfect employee. It was also, quietly, the perfect boss. Now scale that pattern up. What happens when the same logic that produced Robodebt and Horizon gets applied not to benefits and post offices, but to everything? That's not a hypothetical. In China, a social credit system has been in development for a decade, combining government data, financial data, and behavioral data into scores that can restrict travel, access to credit, and even housing. Western commentators love to call this authoritarian, and it is, but the uncomfortable question is whether we're building a softer version of it right now, one insurance claim, one rental application, one hiring filter at a time. You don't need a national ID card to build a score. You just need a credit bureau, a health insurer, an employer, a landlord, and a few data brokers who are willing to sell each other your information. Slice the data any way you like, the score is the same. The governance is the same. Only the flag on the app is different. And the most dangerous part? The people being scored usually don't know the score exists. You found out about your number at 6:47 a.m. because someone decided to tell you. Most people never even get the notification. They just get the denial, the rejection, the silence. And they never learn that the reason they were turned down was a number they never knew existed, computed from data they never agreed to share. If you're a healthy, employed, native-born person with decent credit, you might go years without noticing the algorithm. That's precisely the trap. The systems are designed to be invisible to the people they serve and ruthless to the people they don't. Here's the counterintuitive twist that keeps me up at night. The AI dictatorship doesn't need a dictator, and it doesn't need to be smart. It needs three things, and all three already exist. First, cheap computation. Second, a legal framework that lets organizations offload responsibility to software. Third, and this is the one nobody wants to admit, a public that is too tired, too busy, and too confused to demand a human on the other end of the line. Think about what taking over actually means in practice. It doesn't mean machines giving orders. It means machines making the decisions that used to require a person and humans rubber stamping them because fighting the machine is exhausting. When was the last time you tried to dispute a charge with a chatbot? When was the last time you waited on hold for 40 minutes to speak to a human who could actually override the system? You gave up. Everyone gives up. That surrender is the takeover. In 2024, the European Union passed the AI Act, the first comprehensive attempt to regulate this. It created rules for high-risk systems and demanded that certain automated decisions include a right to human review. This is genuinely important, and I'll defend it against anyone who calls it Luddism. But here's what the AI Act doesn't do. It doesn't say the human review has to be meaningful. It doesn't say the human has to have the data the model used. It doesn't say the human can overrule the machine. In practice, human review can mean a call center agent reading from a script, with the same flawed score glowing on their screen. And that's the real story of algorithmic power in 2027. The laws are racing to catch up, but the systems are racing faster. Every month, there are new automated tools for policing, for hiring, for medicine, for housing. Every month, the number of decisions made without meaningful human oversight grows. The regulators are not evil. They're just slow. And in the gap between speed and law, the score becomes the state. Let me give you the darkest implication. The philosopher of technology Shoshana Zuboff warned that surveillance capitalism isn't about watching you, it's about predicting you, and then modifying your behavior to make those predictions come true. An algorithm that decides your credit score shapes how you spend. An algorithm that decides your insurance premium shapes how you drive. An algorithm that decides your bail shapes your entire future, because a week in jail waiting for trial is enough to lose a job, an apartment, and custody of your children. The prediction becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The machine doesn't just observe your life. It starts writing it. And here's the kicker, nobody voted for this. There was no referendum on automated governance. It arrived through 1,000 procurement contracts, 1,000 efficiency initiatives, 1,000 vendors selling risk intelligence to governments and corporations that were too busy to ask hard questions. That's how every dictatorship in history has arrived, not with a bang, but with paperwork. So let me give you the punch. The question isn't whether the machines are taking over. They already have. The question is whether you still have a human on your side, and the honest answer, in too many systems today, is no. Here's my opinion, and I'm not going to soften it. The only thing standing between us and a fully automated caste system is a legal right that exists in almost no country on earth, the right to a human decision-maker who is personally accountable for the outcome. Not a human in the loop. Not a human review process. A named, identifiable human being who must sign their name to the decision, who can be questioned about it, who can be sued over it, and who cannot hide behind a vendor's proprietary model. We got this right once before. In the 1970s, the United States passed the Fair Credit Reporting Act, which gave people the right to see the files credit bureaus kept on them and dispute errors. It was imperfect, it was fought tooth and nail, but it established a principle: if a system decides your fate, you get to look at it. We need that principle rebuilt for the algorithmic age and extended. The right to know you're being scored. The right to see the score. The right to know what data went into it. And the right to have a human, a real one, say no to the machine. Some of this is already being built. The EU AI Act, for all its flaws, put the right to explanation into law. California passed a law in 2025 giving consumers the right to opt out of certain automated decisions. Individual lawsuits are starting to win. But laws are not the same as enforcement, and enforcement is not the same as culture. The tech companies will keep building scoring systems because they're profitable. The governments will keep buying them because they are cheaper. The only pressure that changes the math is public anger, and public anger only shows up when people know what's happening. So here's what this means for you, personally. Tomorrow morning, when your phone buzzes, look at it like the scorecard it might already be. Ask who computed that number. Ask what data went into it. Ask who you can call when it's wrong. And if the answer is nobody, that's not a bug in the system. That's the system working exactly as designed. The scariest AI dictatorship isn't the one with robots in the streets. It's the one you never notice, because you're the one feeding it your data, one notification at a time. You can opt out of the app. You can't opt out of the score, not yet. But you can refuse to be quiet about it. That's the one vote the algorithm can't predict. Next week, we look at what happens when the score stops being about money and starts being about whether you're allowed to exist, the rise of predictive policing, and the data that decides your fate before you've done anything. You'll want to see this one. It's coming for you. Whether you're ready is the only question.